There comes a moment in every life when the voices around us grow louder than the whispers of our own heart. These voices are not always kind. They do not always encourage. Some come cloaked in doubt, others sharpened with envy, and still others poisoned with malice. They mock your dreams, belittle your faith, and cast shadows over the light God placed within you. And perhaps, for a season, you began to wonder if their words were stronger than your purpose. Perhaps their laughter seemed to carry more weight than your prayers, and their rejection felt heavier than your hope. But I tell you this, God has not forgotten you. The silence they tried to impose upon your life was never stronger than His promise. While they attempted to bury your voice, God was shaping your testimony. While they tried to reduce your worth to nothing, He was multiplying your value in ways unseen. The voices that ridiculed you are but fading echoes in the corridors of time, while His word stands eternal, unshaken, and undefeatable. Do you truly think the one who spoke creation into existence would allow the sound of gossip, lies, or criticism to drown out the voice He Himself placed within you? Think of Joseph, thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, silenced by betrayal. Every voice around him declared defeat, yet the voice of God whispered destiny. From the pit to the prison he was silenced, but when God's appointed hour arrived, Joseph was lifted higher than all who sought to destroy him. The very brothers who tried to quiet his dreams had to bow before the dream God had fulfilled. This is the pattern of divine reversal. What man attempts to silence, God amplifies. What the enemy attempts to destroy, God redeems. Consider also the cross. On that hill the voices of mockery rose. "If you are the Son of God, come down," they shouted. They thought they had silenced the greatest voice to ever walk the earth, but on the third day, God lifted him higher than every tongue of scorn, higher than every scheme of darkness, higher than death itself. What they thought was the end became the eternal beginning. What they tried to silence became the message that resounds through centuries, that love conquers, that grace redeems, that God always has the final word. And so it will be with you. You are not defined by the voices of opposition, but by the one voice that called you His own. He has heard every insult, every rejection, every cruel word spoken against you. He has seen every attempt to quiet your potential and suffocate your calling. But He has also written a decree that cannot be overturned. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. The time is near when He will lift you above the noise, above the lies, above the voices that tried to define you. Imagine for a moment a bird whose song is drowned out by the storm. The rain beats down, the winds howl, and it seems as though its melody has been lost. Yet when the storm passes, the air is clearer, the sky brighter, and the song of the bird rings louder than before. So too will your voice ring. The storms of criticism and cruelty cannot endure forever, but your God-given destiny will. The time will come when your song will be heard in places where their whispers cannot reach. So hold fast. Do not despise the silence forced upon you, for in it God has been tuning your voice for a higher stage. Do not fear the voices of man, for they are but fleeting shadows. Lift your eyes to the hills from where your help comes. The one who called you is faithful. The one who began this work in you will complete it. And when He lifts you, it will not be in secret. It will be in the sight of those who doubted, mocked, and opposed. They will see, and they will know that it was the hand of God that raised you. And here lies the beauty. Your lifting is not merely for your own sake. It is for the glory of the one who defends the silenced, who strengthens the broken, and who vindicates the faithful. Your story will not end in suppression, but in elevation. Your testimony will be that God Himself silenced the voices that tried to silence you, and in their place He raised a sound of triumph that cannot be muted. There are moments in life when the voices of others feel so much louder than the quiet truth of our own soul. It is in those moments that doubt begins to creep in, whispering that perhaps they are right and you are wrong, that maybe their laughter speaks louder than your prayers. Think of how fragile we are when exposed to constant criticism. A word spoken once may pass by quickly, but when repeated, when multiplied, when sung by a chorus of detractors, it can feel like a flood against the fragile walls of your hope. They told you that you were not enough. They mocked the dream you dared to carry. They declared that your silence was inevitable, that your efforts would crumble, and that your voice would never echo beyond the confines of your small world. For a time it seemed they were winning. You felt the sting of being overlooked, dismissed, and even ridiculed. But there is something they did not understand. Your life is not being directed by their voices. Your story has never been written by their pen. Your destiny has not been carved out by their judgments. It is God who holds the script of your life, and His words are louder, deeper, and more eternal than the fleeting noise of men. When God chooses to speak over your life, no one can silence what He has declared. The world may surround you with voices of limitation, but heaven surrounds you with promises of abundance. The enemy may try to reduce you to nothing, but God multiplies your value in secret places. He watches how others treat you, how they diminish your worth, how they try to suffocate your potential, and in those very moments, He is preparing to lift you higher than the reach of their words. Every insult, every rejection, every attempt to silence you is being recorded by the God who misses nothing. He allows it for a season, not because their voices have power over His plan, but because He is proving that no matter how great the noise of opposition, His word is unshaken. The whispers of heaven endure long after the shouts of men have faded. It is often in silence that God's greatest work takes place. Consider a seed buried beneath the earth. To the outside eye, it appears lifeless, hidden, silenced beneath the soil. But in that silence, a transformation begins. Roots grow deep, unseen. Strength is formed in obscurity. One day, that small, silent seed breaks through the soil, rising higher than anyone thought possible, producing fruit for all to see. The silence they tried to force upon you was never your ending. It was the soil of your becoming. It was God's way of hiding you until the right moment, until the strength within you could no longer be denied. Their voices may have mocked your silence, but soon your rising will answer them more loudly than words ever could. Think of Joseph, a young man whose only fault was dreaming too boldly, too vividly in the presence of those who could not understand him. His brothers, consumed by envy, conspired to silence his dreams before they had even taken shape. They threw him into a pit, not just a physical prison, but a symbolic attempt to bury his voice, to erase the vision he had shared. To them, his silence was their victory. To Joseph, the pit must have felt like the confirmation of their power. But to God, it was the beginning of a journey that would prove one thing: no man can silence what heaven has ordained. What they intended for destruction became the stage for divine elevation. From the pit to slavery, from false accusation to prison, the voices of accusation and ridicule trailed him. Yet when God's appointed time arrived, Joseph was not just lifted out of obscurity, he was elevated above the very ones who had tried to silence him. His brothers bowed before him, not because he sought vengeance, but because God's plan always speaks louder than the opposition of man. This story is not just history, it is prophecy for your own life. The voices that have sought to belittle you will not have the last word. those who dismissed your potential, who laughed at your prayers, who told you that your dreams were impossible. They will one day see what God has done in you and through you. They may not bow as Joseph's brothers did, but their own silence in the face of your rising will be the clearest evidence that God's hand was upon you. When He lifts you, He does not lift you halfway. He does not merely bring you out of the pit so you can stand alongside those who mocked you. He sets you higher, beyond their reach, in places they never imagined you could stand. And when you are there, it will be undeniable that the only explanation is the power of God. What Joseph endured was not wasted. Every betrayal, every unjust moment, every cruel voice served as preparation. Had his brothers not sold him, he would not have been taken to Egypt. Had he not been enslaved, he would not have encountered the opportunities that led to the palace. What they meant as a final silencing was in fact the vehicle of his elevation. The same is true for you. What they intended to crush you will carry you, and what they meant to silence you will amplify you. You may not see it now. You may only hear their voices loud and cruel. But remember Joseph, the pit is not the end. The prison is not the conclusion. The voices that mocked him were silenced by God's fulfillment of the dream, and so it will be with you. In time, God will prove that every attempt to bury your voice was actually planting the seed of a greater destiny. On the hill of Calvary, the world witnessed what it thought was the silencing of a voice too bold, too powerful, too disruptive for the order of men. The crowd jeered, the leaders sneered, and the soldiers mocked. "If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross," they cried, believing their cruel words had struck the final blow. The nails pierced not only flesh but seemed to pierce hope itself. The sky darkened, and silence fell as he breathed his last. It looked as though the voices of ridicule had succeeded, as though the story was over and the voice of redemption silenced forever. Yet in that very moment of seeming defeat, heaven was setting the stage for the greatest reversal history would ever know. For on the third day the silence was broken, not by human voices, but by the power of God himself, raising him higher than every tongue of mockery, higher than the accusations, higher even than death itself. What does this tell us about the voices that try to silence you? It reveals that their words, no matter how sharp or loud, are temporary. Their insults echo for a moment, but they cannot outlast the eternal voice of God. What they thought would end you is often the very thing God uses to elevate you. The cross was their attempt at silencing, but it became the throne of eternal glory. The mockery was their weapon, but resurrection was God's answer. In your own life, there are crosses you have carried, moments when the voices of others nailed you down with lies, with ridicule, with rejection. They celebrated too early, convinced you would never rise. But they did not see the third day coming. They did not hear the whisper of resurrection drawing near. When God moves, he not only silences the voices of the enemy, but transforms their attempts into testimonies of his power. The ridicule aimed at you becomes the backdrop of your rising. The gossip that spread like wildfire becomes fuel for your testimony. The rejection that seemed unbearable becomes proof that only God could lift you this high. And when he does, the world will look on, just as the crowd looked on at an empty tomb, and realize that it was not the end, but the beginning of a new story. That is the power of divine reversal. That is the promise of the one who never allows mockery, cruelty, or opposition to write the final word over his children. There is a truth we must hold tightly. You are not defined by the voices of opposition, but by the one voice that called you his own. It is easy to mistake the noise of criticism for reality, to confuse the loudest voices with the truest ones. But loudness does not equal truth. God has spoken over your life with words that cannot be overturned. He called you chosen. He called you beloved. He called you his masterpiece, and no insult, no rejection, no attempt to silence you can erase the voice of the Creator, who spoke existence itself into being. When he declares something, it is finished. When he speaks, the universe obeys. And so the same mouth that commanded light to shine in the beginning has also spoken light over your darkness, declaring that you will rise above the shadows of human judgment. Think of how fragile human words truly are. They ride on breath, vanishing into the air as quickly as they are spoken. And yet, how often do we allow these fleeting sounds to chain our hearts, to weigh us down as though they hold eternal power? But contrast that with the Word of God, which stands forever, unmoved by time, unshaken by opposition. When he says he will lift you, the words of others lose their grip. When he says you are his, the labels they try to place on you fall away like dust in the wind. You may feel wounded by what they said, and perhaps you still carry scars from the times you were silenced. Yet those scars are not proof of their power, but of your survival. They are reminders that their words did not break you. If anything, they have positioned you to hear more clearly the only voice that matters. There will come a day when those who laughed at you will hear nothing but silence, while your voice resounds with clarity and strength. God himself will vindicate you. Scripture says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." Notice it does not say some tongues, but every tongue. Every insult, every lie, every false word spoken against you is marked for judgment. And the very God who watched them try to reduce your worth will lift you in a way that leaves no doubt. His word was always greater than their voices. In the end, they will discover that the voice they tried to silence was never yours alone. It was the echo of heaven resonating through you, and that echo cannot be silenced. Imagine for a moment a bird caught in the heart of a storm. The rain lashes against its wings. The wind howls as if determined to silence its song. For a while, the melody ceases, drowned beneath the roar of the elements. Yet once the storm passes, the world does not remember the thunder or the downpour. What lingers is the renewed song of the bird, sharper and sweeter than before. This is the mystery of endurance under opposition. When you are silenced by cruelty, mocked by voices that rise like storms against you, it feels as if your melody has been lost forever. But God has a way of using storms not to erase your voice, but to prepare it for a greater stage. The silences forced upon you are not wasted. They become the soil from which your song grows louder, more beautiful, more unshakable. When others tried to quiet you, they may have thought they were winning. They saw your withdrawal as defeat, your quiet tears as surrender. But what they could not see was the silent hand of God at work in the unseen. Just as a sculptor chips away at stone to reveal a masterpiece, he was shaping your silence into strength. He was allowing you to be hidden for a season so that your unveiling would silence every critic without a word. That is the way of God. He often hides what he values until the right moment. The enemy thinks he has won, but heaven knows it is only preparation. Think of David in the fields, forgotten, overlooked, unheard. His brothers had voices loud in the ears of men. They stood tall and proud before the prophet. Yet God was not looking for the loudest. He was looking for the chosen. David's silence in the wilderness, his lonely songs on the hillside, became the very preparation that made him fit for the throne. The voices of his brothers did not matter. Even the silence of his father's neglect could not define him. God lifted him higher, and the voices that ignored him were forced to recognize the anointing upon him. The same is true for you. Do not despise your silence. Do not despise the seasons when your voice seems unheard, for when God chooses to lift you, he will place you in a position where your voice resounds far beyond the reach of those who once mocked you. Your silence is not weakness. It is a pause before the breakthrough. It is God's way of strengthening you so that when you speak again, your words carry the weight of heaven behind them. And when that happens, no storm, no mockery, no cruel voice will be able to drown you out. Lift your eyes to the truth. The voices of man are fleeting, but the lifting of God is eternal. What seemed like a permanent verdict against you is only a passing echo. They spoke against you as if their words had the power to shape your destiny, but they forgot that it is God who speaks the final word. And when he chooses to lift you, he does not simply bring you out of obscurity. He sets you on a hill where your light cannot be hidden. Those who tried to smother your flame will be forced to watch it burn brighter than ever. Those who laughed at your silence will one day fall quiet as they see what God has done with the very life they once mocked. You may wonder why God allows those voices for a season. Why does he not silence them immediately? Why endure ridicule, rejection, and lies? The answer lies in the strength he is building within you. If he silenced them too soon, you would never discover the resilience he planted inside you. If he removed the voices at the first sign of pain, you would never learn to hear his whisper above the noise. The voices come not to define you, but to refine you. They sharpen your dependence on God. They teach you to distinguish between fleeting words and eternal truth, and they prepare you for a level of elevation where your voice can no longer be drowned. Think of how a diamond is formed. Beneath immense pressure, in the silence of the earth, carbon is transformed into something of unmatched brilliance. Had the pressure been removed too early, the diamond would never form. In the same way, the voices that pressed against you, that tried to silence you, were never greater than the hand of God, shaping you beneath their weight. And when he reveals you, it will not be a small unveiling. It will be a lifting so high that those voices will not even reach your altitude. Their words will fall powerless at your feet, while your life testifies to the greatness of God. Remember this: when God lifts you, he does it not in secret, but in sight of those who doubted you. It is not to humiliate them, but to glorify himself through you. They will see that your silence was not your end, but your preparation. They will realize that their words did not kill you, but pushed you into the arms of God, where you found strength they could never take away. And as you rise, it will become undeniable that the one who silenced their voices was not you, but God himself. There is a beauty in God's way of lifting his people. When he raises you, it is never just for your sake. The elevation he gives is meant to be a living testimony, a visible sign of his glory, and a reminder that he alone has the power to turn silence into song, rejection into recognition, and shame into honor. Those who try to quiet you will not just watch from afar. They will be forced to acknowledge that it was not your strength, not your strategy, but the very hand of God that carried you higher than their words could ever reach. This is not vindication born of pride, but vindication born of truth, that God defends the silenced and exalts the humble. Every attempt to suffocate your purpose, every cruel word meant to diminish your worth, is being woven into a larger story. That story is not just about your survival, but about your transformation. You did not merely endure the ridicule, you are being shaped into someone who will rise above it. And when you rise, your story will become the very evidence someone else needs to believe that God can lift them too. Your elevation is not only about silencing the voices of your enemies, it is about inspiring the voices of the broken, the silenced, and the forgotten. You will become a testimony that what man cannot control, God redeems for His glory. The truth is, many of the voices that tried to silence you were not born of clarity, but of insecurity. They feared the light in you because it revealed the shadows in them. They mocked your dreams because they had abandoned their own. They tried to quiet you because they could not quiet the conviction your presence stirred in their hearts. But God will not allow their insecurity to dictate your destiny. Their rejection is not a verdict, it is a stepping stone. Their silence forced upon you is not your grave, it is your platform. Their attempts to bury you only ensured that you would be planted deeper, where God's power could cause you to grow beyond what anyone expected. Picture it. The very people who tried to stifle your voice will one day be witnesses to the sound of your rising. They will hear your voice not in the volume of revenge, but in the quiet thunder of fulfillment. They will watch as doors open for you that their words could not close. They will see the platforms God places you on, the opportunities He grants you, the victories He gives you, and they will realize that they never had the power they thought they did. For in the end, every voice that tried to silence you will itself be silenced, not by your hand, but by the undeniable evidence of God's favor on your life. And perhaps the most remarkable part is this: when you rise, it will not be with bitterness, but with peace, because God's lifting does not create arrogance, it creates humility. You will rise with scars, yes, but those scars will sing louder than the voices ever did. They will testify that you endured, that you believed, and that you trusted in the one who saw everything. And now, in His perfect timing, He has lifted you higher than the voices that tried to silence you. So take heart. The ridicule you faced, the rejection you endured, the cruel words spoken against you, they were not the final chapter of your story. God has been watching, recording every detail and weaving them into a tapestry of redemption. He is not only silencing the voices that mocked you, but lifting you into a place where their words can no longer reach. And when He does, it will not be in secret. It will be in plain sight, so that all may know it was His hand that raised you. This is the promise. Your silence will give way to song, your tears will give way to joy, your rejection will give way to recognition, and your wounds will give way to glory. The voices that once sought to drown you out will fade into whispers of the past, while your life becomes a living declaration that no man can silence what God has ordained. Lift your eyes, for the time is near. God is about to lift you higher, far higher, than the voices that tried to silence you.